Remember that day like any other: gray skies, the constant hum of traffic, the smell of wet asphalt. I was running late for work, my coffee lukewarm in a disposable cup, earbuds in, lost in my usual scroll through social media. Life felt flat, the same routine, the same faces, the same tired jokes. I didn't expect anything to happen that day, and yet everything was about to change. I was crossing the small park near my office, the one with the crumbling benches and the lone fountain that barely trickled. That's when I noticed him, a man sitting on a bench, sketchbook in hand, completely absorbed in his drawings. There was something calm about him, almost magnetic. As I hurried past, my shoulder accidentally brushed against his, and he looked up, smiling. "Rough day?" he asked, his voice warm, not intrusive. I hesitated. Normally, I would have muttered a half-hearted "yeah" and kept walking, but something about his expression made me pause. "Yeah," I admitted softly. He nodded as if he understood far more than I'd said. "You know," he began, "sometimes the hardest part isn't the day itself, but thinking it has to stay the same forever." I stopped, curiosity overriding my fatigue. "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely interested. He closed his sketchbook and leaned back. "People get stuck in routines, in their doubts, in their fears, but a single choice, even a small one, can start a ripple that changes everything." His eyes held a sincerity that was hard to ignore. His words lingered with me as I walked to work. At first, I dismissed them as random musings of a stranger. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had just handed me a mirror, and for the first time, I was seeing my own life clearly. I felt a strange mixture of doubt and hope, a realization that maybe, just maybe, change wasn't impossible. That evening, I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, asking myself questions I hadn't in years. What am I really doing with my life? Am I living, or just existing? His words echoed in my mind. I felt surprised at my own reflection, surprised at how hungry I suddenly was for something different. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Instead of diving straight into work, I took a walk around the neighborhood. I noticed things I hadn't before: the way sunlight filtered through the trees, the laughter of children playing, the scent of fresh bread from the bakery. It was small, almost ridiculous, but I felt alive. The excitement didn't last long. By afternoon, doubts crept in. Who am I kidding? I thought. One walk won't change anything. I'm too stuck in this life. I felt the old weight of skepticism pressing down, threatening to pull me back into my monotonous routine. Then, I remembered the stranger's words: "Even a small choice can start a ripple that changes everything." I clung to that sentence like a lifeline. Maybe I wasn't ready for a full transformation, but I could at least try one small thing, one step. I decided to take a detour on my lunch break and visit a bookstore I'd passed 100 times, but never entered. I wandered through aisles of books I'd never considered, feeling a quiet thrill with every title I touched. It was tiny, almost trivial, but it was different, and it felt good. After that small step, I began noticing little opportunities everywhere. A friend inviting me for coffee, a flyer for a local painting class, a new path on my commute. I started saying yes to things I would have ignored before. Every yes felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Change wasn't easy. At work, the monotony remained, and old habits tugged at me. I found myself slipping back into scrolling my phone, endlessly, complaining about the same problems. I realized that desire alone wasn't enough. I had to actively fight for this new path. Late one night, I found myself lying awake, thinking, what if I fail? What if I'm just kidding myself again? Fear and doubt clawed at me, heavier than ever. For a moment, I almost gave up and went back to my old safe routines. But then, a friend texted me out of the blue. "Hey, remember last week when you said you wanted to try something new? Let's do it together." It was small, simple, but it reminded me that I wasn't completely alone. Someone else believed I could try. I started journaling daily, something I'd never done, writing down my thoughts, my fears, my small victories. It became a mirror for my mind. I began seeing patterns in myself I'd ignored for years. With every word, I felt a little lighter, a little braver. Not everyone was supportive. Some people mocked my new hobbies and my attempts to break routine. It stung, and I doubted myself again. But then I remembered the stranger's words, and the small victories I'd already achieved. Slowly I realized that resistance was normal. It meant I was growing. I made a list of tiny goals: take a different route, home, call an old friend, cook a new recipe. Each small success was a spark. I began seeing life not as a static routine, but as a series of possibilities, waiting to be explored. Then came the first real test. Work piled up, stress skyrocketed, and my old coping mechanisms whispered in my ear. I felt like I was falling back into my old self. Panic threatened to overtake me. But this time, I paused. I reminded myself why I started, and chose one conscious act of change: a mindful walk at sunset, to reclaim my center. Gradually, I sought out people who encouraged growth: a mentor at work, a few like-minded friends, online communities. Sharing my small victories and struggles made the journey less lonely. Their support reminded me that transformation didn't have to be solitary. Months passed, and the small choices accumulated. I wasn't perfect, and I still stumbled. But I noticed a subtle shift. I laughed more, worried less about judgment, and embraced opportunities I would have ignored before. Confidence grew quietly, like roots spreading under the soil. One day, I returned to the park where I had met him, hoping to find the stranger again. The bench was empty, the sketchbook gone, but I realized I didn't need him anymore. The seed he planted had grown, and the change now lived inside me. I started sharing my story online, in forums where people seek encouragement, just like I had once needed. I wrote about doubt, fear, and small victories, hoping someone else might find the spark to take their first step. The response was overwhelming. Strangers cheering each other on, proof that growth is contagious. Looking back, I see that ordinary day with new eyes. The gray skies, the coffee, the mundane routine. It was all a setup for change. If I hadn't brushed against that stranger, I might still be stuck, believing life had to stay the same. But now, I know better. Life isn't about huge leaps. It's about moments, choices, and ripples. One encounter, one sentence, one small step can reshape everything. The power to change was never out of reach. I just needed a spark, and the courage to follow it. If you're reading this, unsure if change is possible, remember, it starts with one step. One small choice can ripple outward and transform your life. Doubt will come, fear will whisper, and obstacles will appear, but every tiny victory matters. Life is waiting, not for perfection, but for your courage to try.